Hey, what's up, guys? You're now listening to Devo with Uncle Theo. Today is day 68, and we're going to cover Deuteronomy chapters 24 through 27. As we continue to work through the repeating of the law, Moses hits divorce in chapter 24. Let's read verse 1. He says, "When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out from his house, and she leaves his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter husband turns against her and writes a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house. Or if the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her again to be his wife, since she has been defiled, and that is an abomination before the Lord. And you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance." In this first group of verses, we see Moses showing what are biblical grounds for divorce. And so it's been a long-standing debate on what are biblical grounds for divorce. And that debate didn't originate amongst Christians, even sourcing back to the rabbis during Jesus' time. Here in verse 1, it says that if she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her. And the debate has always been, what is that indecency that can cause or give grounds for divorce? And so they picked this argument back up in the New Testament in Matthew 19, starting at verse 3. There are two schools of interpretation at that time. So where the word disciple comes in is you would be a disciple under a rabbi, and you were said to be under his yoke. And whatever teachings that he taught were your responsibility to learn and carry out, which is why Jesus, who was a rabbi and a teacher as well, says that my yoke is easy, my burden is light. If you follow me and come under my teachings, you will have rest. And that's one of the major themes of the Bible that we've been talking about. Who can bring us rest? Jesus is saying, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath, and I can bring you rest. Other rabbis had yokes and teachings as well. Two at that time was Shema, and the other one was Hallel. And the way they would define indecency would be, Hallel would say, you could get divorced for anything. Indecency means anything that displeases you. If you wake up in the morning and your wife burns your toast and you don't like it, get rid of her. You can divorce her. Any and everything fell under indecency. But Shammai took a more conservative position. They said, no, this indecency is sexual immorality, and it falls under that. And so they bring this to Jesus in Matthew 19, and I'm going to read that. They said Moses commanded them to get a divorce, and Jesus says, no, it was because of your hardness of heart that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been this way. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. So Jesus sides with Shammai. It has to be some sexual immorality there. But you bring that into the Christian world today, and there's even further debate. Okay, what is this sexual immorality? Is it adultery after marriage, or is it adultery before marriage? Because you remember they were betrothed. And so what some people believe is, yeah, if it would have happened during that phase, before you fully consummated the marriage, then you can make it null and void. Now, that's a minority position. Most people believe that if adultery is committed after marriage, that's grounds for divorce. So the conservative position is, I hate using this terminology, but there are three outs in marriage. One is death, which is why we say in our vows, to death do us part. That's becoming a widow or a widower. The other one is found in 1 Corinthians 7, where if someone commits apostasy and walks away from the faith, then you have grounds for divorce. And the third one is this one, sexual immorality. And so that's the mainstream conservative position. And you have varying degrees of that. And I land amongst the mainstream conservative position. The law did extend out more when it came to slaves, because in Exodus 21, if you receive a female slave into your household and your son desires her and marries her, and he sees another woman that he wants to marry and marries her, and he moves on from the slave woman, he cannot mistreat her. He must not reduce her food, her clothing, and her conjugal rights. And we just talked about that in one of the previous chapters of how a slave was to be treated if you divorced her, and how you had to take care of her if you wanted to depart from her. So we see some advancement in laws pertaining to how you deal with female slaves. And obviously this requires more thought and processing, but this is a sticky subject, much debate around it, and I hope this discussion on marriage and divorce helps some. And so we get a bunch of miscellaneous laws that we can file under one of the 10 commandments in the rest of chapter 24. Chapter 25, if there's a dispute between man and they go to court and the judge decides their case. Verse 25 talks about disputes and how to decide those cases in court with judges, and they use lashings. Verse 2 says, if the wicked man deserves to be beaten, you should make him lie down and beat him in the presence with the number of stripes according to his guilt. But you can't strike him more than 40 times, or you'll bring shame amongst your people. And that's in verse 3. Verse 4 says, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing. So that basically means give people the proper reward for their work. And this verse is actually taken, and again in the New Testament, a few times, namely in 1 Timothy, where it talks about paying pastors and leaders in your church. Don't muzzle the ox, pay them according to their labor. And I like to bring that up when the New Testament is pulling from the Old Testament to help you understand how much we lean on the Old Testament in our Christianity. Christianity is birthed through Judaism. And so learning the law well helps your Christianity, because that's 75% of your Bible. And verse 5 on down talks about levirate marriage. When brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a strange man. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her to himself as wife and perform the duties of a husband to her. So this is levirate marriage. This is what Boaz employs with Ruth, where the nearest kinsman, which is where you hear the term kinsman redeemer, would not redeem Ruth, which is why you have this sandal taken off language in verse 9. The brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders and pull off his sandal off his foot and spit in his face, and she shall declare, thus it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. We talked about property redemption laws before, and this is levirate marriage. So those two things together, we need to understand Ruth better. Also, verse 17 helps us to understand what happened in Exodus and what will happen in 1 Samuel with Agag. So it says, remember what Amalek did to you along the way when you came out from Egypt, how he met you along the way and attacked among you all the stragglers at your rear when you were faint and weary, and he did not fear God. Therefore, it shall come about when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your surrounding enemies in the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You must not forget. So God is very serious about destroying the Amalekites. And this will resurface in 1 Samuel with Saul. Saul does not do this, which is why his dynasty and kingship is stripped from him. Then you'll see the fruit of that with Haman and Esther, who is an Agagite, who descends from Amalek. God always knows the fruit of not obeying his word, which culminates in the Jews almost being destroyed, because Haman wanted to destroy the Jews, because this is a long built up feud. And this always reminds me just to obey the Lord, because you don't know the tragedy and the detriment it'll create on your children and your children's children, whereby not obeying the Lord in something that looks small to you could end in a genocide of another nation. So a lot of our questions on why, Lord, why should I do this, can be soothed by knowing stories like this. We really don't need to know the why. Let's just obey him because he's all knowing. He sees all of the future because it's ordained by him. And so let's trust him. Chapter 26 talks about first fruit offerings. And so first fruit offerings should be given on the first harvest reaped by Israel once they're in the land of Canaan. And so don't confuse this with the Feast of First Fruits or Pentecost. This is the gift that they will give as a celebration for coming into the land. And tithing is spoken on again here in chapter 26. So I'm not going to cover this because we've covered tithing multiple times, but I did want to introduce the first fruit giving. And I grew up in churches that used to take all your money. You hear me? All of it. We had a tithe, we had an offering, we had a first fruit giving, we had a building fund, we had a pastor's anniversary gift. I've been in church and literally the collection plate has been passed around at least 3 times. And all of that is just a misunderstanding around giving and the law. And so you just take words like this, first fruit or offering or tithe, and you build a theology around it. And I just pray we can have a healthier discussion around money in the church. And this isn't so prevalent in more affluent or suburban areas, but it's very prevalent in the inner city, in urban country churches. And we just got to do a better job there. And that's it. Verse 18, the Lord has declared to you to be his people, a treasured possession, as he promised you. And in chapter 27, we end with the curses of Mount Ebal. And so Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim are significant places in the land of Canaan. They're located in proximity to the key city we talked about, Shechem. So Moses gives a series of curses. Curses a man who makes an idol. Curses one who dishonors his mother and father. Curses one who misleads the blind person on the road. Curses the one who lies with his father's wife. Curses the one who lies with an animal. Curses the one who lies with his sister. Curses the one who lies with his mother-in-law. This actually happened in 1 Corinthians, by the way. And Paul is rebuking that. And we'll see later more curses and more blessings. And remember, we're ending on Jesus a lot in this series. Notice why when Jesus is fully confirmed as the king, where does he go? He goes to a mountain and he begins to teach. And he says the exact opposite. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you. Where Moses offers curses on the mountain, Jesus offers blessings. Why is that? Because in Christ, all you can be is blessed. Because Christ has paid it all. When you obtain his righteousness, all he has to offer you is blessings. So look at the difference of the prophet Moses and the prophet Jesus. Moses said, there will be one of your countrymen. Listen to him. And he comes with blessing because that's all he knows, because he became a curse so that we may be blessed. You guys take care.